Geeta Mohan and Sandeep Unitin continue to be with us. Sandeep, let's discuss the timeline. 1:40 a.m., as mentioned in the press briefing, that Pakistan decided to strike at our civilian targets, at our military installations, and then the response that came from India.
Well, Pooja, this 1:40 a.m. airstrikes by Pakistan across the western border were preceded by a series of drone intrusions.
Yes.
If you noticed last night, we were discussing this, exactly what we and our experts were talking about, how these drones attacks, these drone incursions were likely the precursor to a major Pakistan Air Force strike. And this is exactly what seems to have happened. When the drones were sent in to illuminate our radars, to identify where the air bases are, and look for, chinks in our armor, in our air defense network, through which they could penetrate, possibly send in fighter aircraft, target our installations. And this is what seems to have played out from 1:40 a.m. as the spokespersons were informing us. And based on this, India responded by striking these 6 strategic air bases of the Pakistan Air Force. And it is very likely that the choice of these targets, these 6 air bases that were selected, had to do something with the kind of support that they had given this PAF attack that unfolded late last night and early in the morning. It is quite possible that the Indian Air Force would have identified these air bases as being the launch pads of these fighter aircraft that came across, and decided to strike across into those air bases, striking at all of their technical infrastructure, their ammunition sites, command and control positions, and weapon storage depots and the like. So sending out a very strong message. And what is remarkable here, Pooja, to note is that how swiftly we have responded.
Exactly. I
From
agree.
several hours, it has now come down to a matter of minutes now. It is quite possible that this kind of response was possible only because the Air Force was looking at the Pakistan Air Force very closely. They monitored the aircraft, where they took off from, where they grouped up in the sky, and where they launched, where they headed out, and then targeted the bases from where these fighter aircraft took off. These 6 strategic air bases, it's no accident. The choice of these air bases is not accidental. It has to do with where the PAF launched their fighter aircraft.
So you believe that the air bases in Pakistan that were struck were not because we had the coordinates already, but because it was in response to the missiles that were fired, whether it was the Fatah missile or other attacks that were fired, possibly from these 6 air bases?
It has a very high likelihood of that having happened, because the PAF has dozens of other, there are almost a total of 40 air bases and airfields. But these 6 strategic air bases were chosen to send out a message that, if you attack us, we will strike you back home, and we know where your aircraft are, where they flew, where they took off from. And this is to attack them in their point of origin. So that's a very important message that's come out over there.
This is fantastic coordination, the synergy that I can only imagine that happened at multiple levels. Geeta, I bring you in here. Tell me about, one, how is the Pakistan establishment, the ministers, the DGIs who have been responding and trying to push forth a certain propaganda? And how do you look at the Indian communication strategy? I believe that in the past few years, we hadn't seen an India which was putting forth its view in this manner, not only about defense or offense, but also debunking the propagandas of Pakistan, which I see now happening in these press conferences.
Well, Pooja, I couldn't hear you very clearly, but if the question is to me and on
tell us about what you're picking up
propaganda,
from how the Pakistan establishment has been responding, like you're telling us about trying to share their propagandas. I can only see them getting exposed with the evidence that's coming in, and how Indian government and the MOD as much are debunking that propaganda, putting forth a communication strategy.
Well, let me begin by saying a few things that Pakistan has been doing. And then we'll talk about how India is dispelling and debunking those claims. Look at what Pakistan's premier, the Pakistani Prime Minister, has done. Apart from the fact that he's spewing lies and talking about things that they've done to India, which is not true. He's also now, there is some nuclear saber rattling that you'd be seeing with Pakistan Prime Minister. There are reports that Pakistan Prime Minister has called for a meeting of body that oversees nuclear arsenal. Now, this again is a messaging to India and the world that they are looking at and they're overseeing the nuclear arsenal. Whether they're going to use it or not is a different matter altogether. But the fact that they are looking at it, that the Prime Minister has called for a meeting to oversee the nuclear arsenal in itself is messaging of sorts. Khwaja Asif. Khwaja Asif, not just in Parliament, in interviews, has said that, one, they've given a befitting reply to India. Secondly, that they're going to do all it takes. And thirdly, he's already almost declared it a war. He said it in so many words that this now is an open war between India and Pakistan. And sadly, he says that we'll do all we can, even if we have to send our children to the front. No qualms there in what he's saying, and I don't know whether they listen to themselves when they're talking and addressing the nation. The information minister has gone on various news channels, international and Pakistani, and has one by one said things about the operations that took place, Pakistan's aggressive behavior and aggression, where he said that nothing of that sort has happened. Again, India one by one taking all those questions, barring the nuclear arsenal bit, because that's a news that's just come in, has broken all of that down and said that not only have they not been able to penetrate and destroy India's critical infrastructure, that Pakistan has been violative of all norms in terms of one, lying and then sending drones across. These are not things that one can deny. I do not understand how we have visual proof and yet denial coming from Pakistan.
But so that's what Pakistan has always done. They've lived on denial and they've expected the world to believe, and that's perhaps is getting exposed this time as much. I appreciate you joining us. Geeta, stay on with me. Sandeep, from the press conference, the words that we have to pick on. They tried attacking the Punjab airbase. They tried attacking a school in Avantipura, if I heard it correct. They did attack a civilian structure in Rajouri, where 2 children also appear to have lost their life. Again, it was a convent facility. Even in Avantipura, they're targeting civilian infrastructure where there could be children, there could be women, and Punjab airbase being targeted. And of course, I mean, that was not successful.
Pooja, not surprising at all. If you heard the briefing yesterday, where they clearly mentioned the fact that they had targeted a convent in Poonch, where they had killed 2 children over there. Over the last couple of days, they've been targeting gurdwaras, they've been targeting temples, they've been targeting convents. You know, you're dealing with a military that cares very little for the lives of its own citizens. What to speak of Indians across the border? They have been proceeding with, an alarming disregard, callous disregard for civilian lives. All that matters is the survival of the Pakistan military and its, face in this conflict. And all of these measures that we've heard are essentially about protecting the image of the Pakistan military. It stands shattered, it stands cracked over the last couple of days. These strikes, these retaliatory strikes by us into Pakistan's Punjab province, targeting their military assets, targeting their air force assets, have exposed the fact that the Pakistan military is actually protecting terrorist infrastructure in Punjab. Pooja, that's one of the biggest takeaways over the last couple of days. We've seen that being revealed time and again. This has been called out by several people. It's all been out in the open. For the longest time, the Pakistan military has employed a strategy of deniability. They would deny any association with these terrorist groups and, of course, the terror acts that they committed. But today, this week, we have seen that facade of deniability being ripped apart.
Landing up at the funeral of terrorists.
Landing up at the funeral of terrorists, protecting terrorist infrastructure, retaliating for attacks on terrorist infrastructure by targeting our civilian infrastructure and our military air bases. The facade of the Pakistan military stands exposed, Pooja.
Good that it is all on evidence, it is all with visuals, and that's how India is speaking this time.